Amanda Ross grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, the daughter of the late Terrell Ross, founder of the politically respected financial company Ross, Sinclair and Associates. Her love of politics motivated her to seek a career with the state of Kentucky. Amanda landed the role as Director of Financial Standards and Examination for the Kentucky Department of Insurance, and had been elected to the board of the Lexington Humane Society. According to her family, she was very charming, had an infectious laugh, loved art, fashion, and history, and was dedicated to her family and community. In 2005, Amanda first met Steve Nunn while he was working as a consultant for her father's firm. Steve was a member of the Kentucky House of Representatives from 1990 to 2006. He is the son of the late Kentucky Governor Louis B. Nunn, who served as governor from 1967 to 1971. Steve attempted to follow in his father's footsteps. He had one unsuccessful attempt in 2003 for the gubernatorial nomination. He eventually moved on to hold the position of Deputy Secretary for Health and Human Services for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He was a 52-year-old divorced father of two. Amanda and Steve did not start dating until September of 2007. By March 2008, Steve had moved into 27-year-old Amanda's townhome in the Opera House district in Lexington, Kentucky. They were briefly engaged. Steve moved out in October of the same year because, according to him, the relationship had deteriorated. They continued to see each other, however. Not long after, though, on February 18, 2009, Amanda filed a domestic violence protection order against Steve Nunn, alleging in her complaint that while Steve was visiting her home, he struck her in the face 4 times, threw her into a lamp, breaking it, and tossing a cup of bourbon in her face. Steve claimed that Amanda tried to prevent him from leaving, creating a 20-minute struggle. He maintained that it was Amanda who had thrown him into the lamp, even forcing him to vacuum up the broken pieces. He stated that because Amanda worked out with a personal trainer twice a week, that she was, quote, strong like a bull, end quote. The protection order was granted. On February 19th, Steve was placed on unpaid administrative leave from his job as deputy secretary. He ultimately resigned in March. Ironically, a duty in his position included oversight of domestic violence programs. Amanda was awarded a 1-year protective order with no contact allowed from Steve. Additionally, he was not allowed to possess a gun while the protective order was active. In August of 2009, Steve entered an Alford plea to a misdemeanor charge of domestic violence assault. An Alford plea acknowledges there is enough evidence to garner a guilty verdict while admitting no guilt. On September 9, 2009, Amanda ran into Steve unexpectedly in Frankfort, Kentucky. She told her supervisor that he had stared her down and she felt as if he could have killed her. Amanda had to leave work early that day. She was so rattled by the encounter. 2 days later, on the 11th, Amanda was leaving for work before the sun had even risen. As she walked towards her car, she was met by Steve Nunn, brandishing a .38 caliber pistol. She screamed before being shot several times. Neighbors, startled by the sounds, rushed to see a man running from the parking lot. By 6:35 a.m., emergency personnel and law enforcement arrived on scene. They rushed her to the University of Kentucky Medical Center, where 29-year-old Amanda passed a short time later. An all-points bulletin was immediately issued for Steve Nunn due to the active protection order. After questioning his family and friends, law enforcement learned he had become increasingly suicidal due to his domestic violence charge and loss of his job. One of several suggestions as to where he may have fled was his parents' grave at Hart County Cemetery. Steve's car was observed in the cemetery's parking lot. He allegedly fired his pistol once as officers approached to apprehend him. Luckily, the shot hit no one. He had cut his wrist in an attempt to end his life. He was treated and released back into custody the same day and taken to the Hart County Jail. When questioned, he refused to admit that he had shot and killed Amanda Ross. A 7-page letter was found in his car, which included his desire for revenge against Amanda. He blamed her for his life and his career spiraling after his domestic violence charge. On September 14, 2009, Steve Nunn was charged with first-degree murder, violating a protective order, and 6 counts of wanton endangerment of a police officer due to the shot fired at the cemetery, though those charges were likely to be dropped. On September 17th, he pled not guilty in Fayette District Court in Lexington, Kentucky, and on November 10, 2009, Steve was indicted for the violation of protective order and murder of 29-year-old Amanda Ross. This case received plenty of news coverage at the time due to the political affiliation. An arduous 2-year battle to seek justice for Amanda finally came to an end in June of 2011. Steve Nunn pled guilty to the charges. His trial had been set to begin in August, with prosecution seeking the death penalty. Fear of receiving the death penalty prompted him to make a plea deal. He waived formal sentencing and was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. In September 2009, Greg Stumbo, then Kentucky House Speaker, introduced a bill called Amanda's Bill that would allow judges the option of making individuals named in domestic violence orders wear electronic tracking devices that would alert authorities if a breach occurred. Victims of domestic violence could choose to wear a device that alerted them as well, if the person with the order comes within a certain distance. The bill received Amanda's mother's blessing. On April 14, 2010, the Senate and the House voted unanimously to approve Amanda's bill. In November 2012, Steve Nunn was found liable in the wrongful death lawsuit that had been filed by Amanda's family. Thank you for watching Justice Calls. Are you listening?